Hello and welcome to the second session of the Content Marketing Fundamentals course with Luann Wise. My name is Kasia Wajtes. I'm the Director of Operations at Co-Founders Lab, and I will be your moderator today. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items. This session is being recorded. That's the common question that we get. So yes, the session is being recorded, and you will all receive a link to the recording and to the slides either today after the session or tomorrow morning. So whether you attended and just want to review the session, or if somebody hasn't attended, all of you who are registered will receive the link to the recording. And the link will also, the email will also have a link to the resources page that Luann has created for you, and you will be able to go to that page and get all the great resources that Luann has collected. Just as like last time, we would like to make this session interactive. So please do ask us questions. Ask questions to Luann. You can type in your questions in the questions module on your GoToWebinar panel. And Luann will be, as she goes through the presentation, she will stop and review the questions, and she will be answering the questions as we go through the presentation. We will also have a short session, well, depending how much time we have left, but we'll also have a Q&A session at the very end of the webinar, so hopefully we'll answer all the questions that you will have for us today. And now, Luann, I'm handing it off to you.
Thank you, Kasia. So, welcome to part 2 of this Content Marketing Fundamentals course. My name is Luann Wise, and I've been planning and creating content for over 15 years in agency, client-side, and consultancy roles. Today, we're going to briefly recap on the first session before moving on to talk about storytelling, branding, and the buyer's journey. So last week's session, the definition of content marketing, the art of communicating with your customers and prospects without selling. It's non-interruption marketing. Instead of pitching your products or services, you are delivering valuable information that makes your buyers more intelligent. If we as businesses deliver consistent, ongoing, valuable information to buyers, they will ultimately reward us with their business and loyalty. We talked about content, meaning words and images. Content to be used across all marketing channels, not just online. But for online, we talked about the importance of content for search, for getting found, for creating awareness, and for driving traffic to your website, which is something we're going to talk about next week. There were a number of questions throughout the session last week, particularly around being consistent with content marketing. And having thought about this, I knew the answer, but I did reflect on it. It's about having a plan. You've got to commit to that plan in exactly the same way as you do to any other business or marketing activity. It's the only way to make things happen. We talked about curating content as well as creating content, and I hope that some of you have been able to set up Google Alerts and RSS feeds using Feedly since the last session. There was also questions around the sharing of other people's content, and I found a great resource from the Content Marketing Institute on that. Remember, you can pick up the resources after the session because a link is included with the recording. We talked about measuring success with content marketing, and I included a link for a lynda.com course in the resources. And in last week's poll we had at the beginning of the session, you told me that most people listening you're at the start of your journey with content marketing. So again, today, I hope for you, there's plenty of ideas to get that plan together, to get started. And for those of you that are already in progress and producing content, that it will give you some reassurance and new tips. Just picked up one question. I'll come back to these questions at the end. Unless they're specific to the content that I'm covering, I'll come back to that one right at the end, the RSS feed question. I'll leave it there. So the agenda for today is we're going to talk about branding. We're going to talk about creating your brand, or more appropriate, perhaps telling your story. We're going to talk about knowing your customers, We're going to talk about content marketing and the buyer's journey, and I've got a couple of models in there to show you later, and we're going to talk about finding your influencers, and I've got 2 or 3 really useful tools that will help you do that, which will help you extend the reach of your content. So let's start with branding. I don't think you can say it better than this quote from Amazon's Jeff Bezos. Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And branding, it's not just a logo. A brand is your promise, and it's your promise consistently delivered. It's that set of perceptions and images that represent your company, your product, or your service. It is your identity. It is the visual aspects of your brand. That is part of it. The logo is part of your identity. It's the part that identifies your business in the simplest form, but there's more to it. It's not just the logo, it's not just the colours, it's not just the visuals. It's your promise that you're making to yourself and to your customers. And the power of branding. Anyone that knows me, anyone that's seen my messaging or read any content, I drink a lot of coffee, and I think this is a classic example of the power of branding in how much we will pay for a coffee at a coffee shop. So when you work at a company, you're aware of the company's branding, the meaning of the name, the representation, and the differentiation from other companies. To some degree, personally, you sit in the shadow of that brand. You're associated with it. But as long as you stay at the company, that's fine. But as a business owner, you really only have one brand that matters, and that's you. Just like that company, you have to have your own brand. We, advisors, experts, consultants, we get hired not just because of qualifications and skills, but because we make people feel a certain way. We know them, we hire them because they're professional and they're capable, but what really at the heart of the matter is how we expect people to feel when we're working with them. There's that other lovely quote from Maya Angelou that people will forget what you say, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So personal branding, it's the practice of people marketing themselves and their careers as brands. It's essentially that ongoing process of establishing the image or impression in the mind of others, the same as you do with a company, but for yourself as an individual. Personal branding puts the intention and the focus in your reputation and ensures that other people see you the way you want. You do have to work at it, but it also has to be authentic. And here's just one example. Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm sure most of you have seen him or heard of him. He's the subject of Daily V, an online documentary series highlighting what it's like to be a CEO. He's a real public figure in today's digital world. He's also the host of #AskGaryV, which is a business and advice Q&A show online. And there's lots of examples if we think about it. X Factor's Simon Cowell, Anton Deck, Katie Hopkins, and dare I say it, Donald Trump. These people have created something around them that you know what you're going to get from them. And here's another quote, and another great example of a personal brand. Last week I shared a Seth Godin quote that content marketing is the only marketing that's left. And here's another. Marketing is no longer about the stuff you sell, but the stories you tell. And that first part of branding, at the heart of your content marketing, is your story. Stories have been shared in every culture as a form of education and entertainment since symbols were first painted on cave walls. Stories have been told using music, dance, art, as well as the written word. And they're a great way of sharing and interpreting experiences. It's also a way of involving people. If you tell a story, it provides a narrative that they can relate to and get involved with. Now, someone's asked a question about, is today's webinar going to cover some content marketing strategies, or is it just theory? Now, if you did listen to last week's session, I'll just cover this off now. Content marketing is not a strategy. You have a business strategy, and from that you have objectives, and from that you may have a marketing strategy or an operational strategy, but content marketing is a tactic to deliver and achieve that strategy. And what we're talking about in this course is the different things that we need to think about and consider to do content marketing well, to achieve our business objectives and our business strategy. So there's lots of ideas in here that you'll need to pull together, but these are the things that you need to be thinking about to create that plan. So back to this slide, you may have seen it. After this session, I'm going to ask you to search for Simon Sinek's Start With Why TED Talk. Even if you've seen it before, watch it again. I watch it regularly and I've read the book many times. In Start With Why, Sinek says that every organisation functions on 3 levels. What we do, how we do it, and why we do it. Sinek argues that every organisation knows what it does, the products it sells or the services it offers, and that every individual knows what they do, their job title and their responsibilities. Some also know how they do it and how they do what they do and what they think makes them different from everyone else. However, Sinek says few people and few organisations can clearly articulate why they do what they do and why that should matter to anyone else. Who is the article by? It's Simon Sinek. So the what, the outer circle of this golden circle that Sinek calls this concept. The what is that every organisation on the planet knows what they do. That's the products they sell or the services they offer. Then it's the how. Some organisations know how they do it. These are the things that make them special or set them apart from the competition. But it's the why, in the centre of that golden circle. Very few organisations know why they do what they do. Why is not about winning an award. That's the result. It's a purpose, a cause, or a belief. And it's the very reason your organisation exists. It's the reason that you get up in the morning is your why. Now, if anyone saw yesterday's announcement, you know, that's a classic example of knowing your why. We buy Apple products because of their why, the think differently. We don't buy the list of features and benefits. We buy what they stand for and how it makes us feel when we have an Apple product. So most of the time, we communicate from the outside in of this golden circle. We start with what we do, then how we do it. But what we need to be doing is thinking about the why. Simon Sinek's classic quote on this one is, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So for the golden circle to work properly, you must be clear about your why, be disciplined about the how, and be consistent about the what. No one section is more important than the other. The most important thing is a balance across all 3. But you need to know about your why, your purpose at that core, so that everyone internally and externally can understand it. And it becomes the story behind your content. Watch the video, read the book, find your why, find your story to tell, and then the creation of content will become a lot easier. So let's move on. Who needs to hear your why? The content you curate and distribute, 3 different things we talked about last week, must be of value to your customers. Which means you need a detailed understanding of your customers and what's important to them, the problems and the challenges that they face, the questions they're asking their friends, their family, their peers, colleagues, and Google. Now, I'm going to go back to basics on target audiences, and I won't apologise for that. I read a piece of research only today that, you know, it's still a huge challenge for marketers to understand their audience. Many businesses try to be all things to all people. It can be difficult to understand that not everyone will want to buy your product or service, but, you know, could you fulfill the demand if they did? It's important to have a clear focus on the people we want to target with our product or service. Doesn't stop people from outside that group purchasing from you, that's great, but it does allow you to target your communications and your content in a way that will resonate more strongly with those who matter most. So whether your product or service is aimed at a business-to-consumer audience or a business-to-business audience, it's essential to understand who you're talking to and what makes them tick. Remember, B2B or B2C, you're targeting people, some of whom just happen to be at work. And while demographics such as age and gender are important, there are some other key areas to review. For example, what do they do? What's their occupation, their level of seniority, their responsibilities? Where do they do it geographically? What do they do offline? What are their lifestyle signals, such as where they like to shop, where they prefer to eat, what media they consume, the TV channels, the radio stations, the newspapers they read, and which hobbies do they participate in? And what do they do online? Which websites do they visit? Which email newsletters do they receive? Which social media platforms do they use? Now, for B2B, there's some additional criteria to that. That includes business activity, business size by turnover or number of employees, the type of business, and how long they've been trading. There's many sources for that kind of insight for B2B, including Mintel, Nielsen, YouGov, Companies House, Secretary of States, for example, and I've included a number of those resources in the links to those resources in the follow-up information so that you can start to have a look and see what you can find out about your target audiences. It's also likely that your business will have more than one target audience to reach out to, and that's fine. Each will have their own characteristics and their own requirements for marketing communications. So what you need to do is list all of your potential audiences, and for each one, create a persona, which is a one-page template that could look like this. Any activity that needs to appeal to a target audience with the aim of persuading them to take action should involve the creation and use of a persona. It's a way to represent that segment of your audience, and you use it to help you understand. You understand their needs, what goals they're trying to achieve, and their pain points, their challenges. You understand what's important to them in their roles and their responsibilities. You start to understand how you can best communicate with them. And also, which we'll talk about shortly, is, you know, what or who might influence their decision making. All the information you can gather about your target audience onto one piece of paper will really help you focus on creating content. There's a number of ways to prepare these. You know, you can do one-to-one or group interviews are usually most effective. It's not a quick exercise, but it's certainly worth doing. Create yourself a standard list of questions and explore them during the discussions. Do some research in advance and use other data to support the interviews. Look at your website analytics, where people have visited from, the keywords they used to find you, what they did once they're on your website. Try and gather all this information, because the more research you can apply to creating a persona, the more accurate they become. And the better you know your customers, customer, your potential customer, the better you'll be at creating content that they will read, watch, listen, and respond to. You basically create your content with that person in mind. When you have a person in mind that you're writing for, recording a video for, recording an audio for, it becomes a lot easier. You focus on that person. Everything you do needs to focus on your customer, because that's at the heart of the definition of marketing and content marketing. Okay, so we know our story, we know our why, and we know who our customers are, so let's get back to content. Content marketing is about delivering content your audience is seeking in all the places they are searching for it. So last week we talked about content creation and curation. That's the fact that you can't produce everything you possibly need and you need to share content from others. And there were some questions around content distribution, and this is the answer. If you've understood your customer, you've created that persona, you know their communication preferences, you'll know where to distribute your content, because you know what they're doing online, what email newsletters they're reading, what magazines they're reading, what social media platforms they're on. Understand your audience. It's all about search and getting found, so you've got to be where they are. Now, there's no one-size-fits-all for that search process. Unfortunately, it sounded simple, but it's not. So here's a couple of models that will explain why. First, I'm going to talk through the buyer's journey, and then I'm going to show you a content marketing matrix showing you how different types of content that we talked about last week are a better fit across different parts of that journey. I know we're covering quite a lot. We will have time for questions, but remember, you will get a copy of the recording to review again afterwards. So, the buyer's journey. There is a journey to becoming a customer. We know now what our customers might look like, but they might not yet be aware that we exist. Potential customers might not make themselves known to us immediately. We talked last week, they carry out so much research, particularly online, before they ever make contact with a company, which means we need to have our expert content ready for them to find and to answer their questions and encourage them to make contact with us. The aim of putting content out there is to create a conversation with the target audience. So whether it's B2C or B2B, product or service, everyone goes through a buying decision process. Now, depending on the product or service, the value of it, the complexity of the decision, the timescale for the process will differ. For example, the decision to buy a pair of shoes, for me, is made much more quickly than a decision about which business software that I would need to invest in. And that process, that journey, begins with recognizing a problem. It might not always be triggered by a customer. It might be stimulated by some content that you share about your product or service, helping the potential customer realize that they have a need that needs to be solved. Once a problem is recognized, the information search begins. Potential customers are now looking for their recommendations and their trusted advisors. The research process continues and customers begin to evaluate alternatives, look at testimonials, case studies that offer reassurance are really key at this stage. Then it's time for the purchase decision. And you need to stay close to that prospective customer at this point, offering reminders that you're the right solution to solve their problem. After purchase, the process hasn't ended. The customer must decide whether they're satisfied with the decision they've made. They're making a post-purchase evaluation. If they are satisfied, they'll recommend your product or service to others. So if content is there to help your business move a potential customer through the buying process, then the purpose of each piece of content you produce, share, create, find, must match the customer's needs at each stage. Now here's another model that will now help you to see the different types of content that are required at those different stages. It might look a bit complex when I change the slide, but I've included an article that will explain more after the session. So this is the content marketing matrix. It's been developed by First 10 and Smart Insights, both excellent websites and full of resources. And this shows in a quadrant different types of content for different stages of that buying process. Along the top you can see awareness through to purchase. But we've also got other factors to take into consideration. I talked last week about the different types of content and how content is there to entertain, inspire, educate, and convince people to buy. People respond to content in different ways. Some content has an emotional response, so we can see down the left-hand side, and some is more rational. And the thing I love about this content marketing matrix is actually there's loads of ideas in here of the type of content you can produce and what emotion and response that can evoke, and whether it's more relevant at the awareness stage or the purchase stage. So entertaining content quite early on could be a quiz, could be a branded video. Slightly more rational, slightly more educational would be an infographic or a guide. As people move through the journey, they're looking for more detailed content, a press release, an ebook, a demonstration. And then as you're getting close to purchase, you want to know about the product features. You want to look at checklists, maybe some calculators and case studies. So there's lots of ideas on this slide for different types of content you can produce, create, find, share with your audience for those different stages of the buyer's journey. It can take some time to map out and plan, but I'm just trying to give you some tools and some thoughts to make this work for you. So there's a question here, how can we make personas when we're dealing with B2C and there are unlimited audiences for our services? I don't believe any product or any service has an unlimited audience. Anyone can buy it, but you've got to focus on a specific group that it's really relevant for and pick a certain criteria with a certain need that it will be relevant for. It could be gender, it could be age, it could be location, it could be lifestyle status, but there's got to be something, a few sets of criteria that make your product or service more relevant for a certain group over others. If you want to drop me a line specifically and tell me what your product or service is, we can probably pick that up, but everyone no one has an audience of everyone. Okay, so we've covered quite a lot, and one of the things I mentioned earlier was who influences a decision? Who is influencing your persona in making their decision to buy? Who are they asking for those recommendations? We talked about the fact that this is all about search. People are doing so much search online, face-to-face before they make any decisions. So who is doing that influencing? It's really important. It's important as well because sometimes, you know, it is quite difficult to reach your target market directly. You can hit that wall. We ask people for opinions, not just friends and family, but how many people use TripAdvisor or look at Amazon reviews before they make a purchase now? Influencer marketing is emerging as a new trend. It's always been done, but it's another buzzword, I guess. It's where a focus is placed on finding key individuals rather than the target market as a whole. Like the strangers on review sites, influencers can really shape purchasing decisions without ever actually being personally accountable for them. We're all sharing, liking and commenting on social media, so perhaps consider who might be the people that really influence your industry or customers. Who would you really like to comment on your latest up to? Or who would you most like to retweet your posts? Find them, like their content, be visible in front of them, start to build a relationship, and they might just start to do the same for you. They'll share your content to their audience and exert influence over them. So the question's not there, but it will be in a second. You know, how do we find these users? Sometimes it's easy. You can find them in the press, industry analysts, business experts, business reports, etc. Names are often out there. Some are less easy. And so the answer is social media listening. We mentioned last week about setting up sources to curate content. That was monitoring hashtags, using Google Alerts, using RSS feeds, and exactly the same way, some names will start to appear. You can also go in search of influencers. You can use tools such as Klout or Kred. Klout and Kred are websites that use social media analytics to rank its users according to influencers, which is a numerical value between 1 and 100. I've included links to those in the resources. And while they're useful tools, Klout and Kred just provide a number. And I find that a little bit more information can be useful when assessing possible influencers to work with. So here's some questions to consider. Do they have large networks of people that engage with them? Who are their followers and connections? i.e., do they keep good company? How often do they post content? What are the topics of the content that they share? How are people engaging with them? And as an example on Twitter, do they have a really credible following-follower ratio? That's, you want them to have more followers than they're following. Now, most importantly, make sure you choose influencers who are relevant to you, your business, and your target audience. Remember, each social media platform is different, each marketing channel is different, so there might be different influencers across the different marketing tools that you're using. But I have got a great tool for you to help. I'll come back to that slide. It's called BuzzSumo. It does come with a fee, a low price, I'll show you in a second, but it's a great website for finding influencers around specific topics of content and then being able to analyze what content performs best. Here's the different levels of accounts, just so you can have a look, and you can see that the different pricing relates to how many searches, how many alerts, and the type of questions that you're analyzing. So if you're looking for audiences, for influencers in your field, your topic areas, your target audience, then this is a great tool to use. Just going to go back to that slide that I missed, which was who are your influencers? So they were a couple of tools to find it, but these are the, all the people out there that could be influencing your customers. It could be academics, it could be authors, it could be journalists, it could be competitors and vendors, analysts, consultants, industry bodies, retailers, other systems. When you start to actually sit down and think and plan who are your influencers, then this is just a few ideas of who you might be looking for. Klout, Kred, and BuzzSumo are the tools that can help you do it. So that's 35 minutes of slides to go through. There is quite a lot of content on there, and I can see some questions coming through. So we have covered today content marketing in terms of branding. What does that mean? And you, as a business owner, needing to develop a personal brand and what that could look like, that you need a story, you need to know your why. That's at the heart of your story, the information you're sharing, and you need to know who you're sharing that with. You've really got to have a good understanding of your customers. And then it comes on to content marketing. Back to some of the basics we talked about last week, the buyer's journey, the content marketing matrix, and who is influencing your audience. It's all about searching, getting found, so there's lots of factors that come into play. So Kazia, that's the end of the slide, so let's just start to have a look at some of the questions in a second. Sleeping about. Okay, just going to check these slides through. What do I like? Back to the beginning, and RSS feeds, which is something we covered last week. What advice do I have if the website doesn't offer an RSS feed capability? Then I would suggest setting it up as a keyword, as a Google Alert keyword, having a look at it that way, or failing that, if you really can't get it to import in Feedly, Feedly does have a lot of useful Q&A, help screens. You might just need to bookmark it and remember to go back to it. But usually Google Alerts, which can come into your RSS feed, is the best way round if you can't actually find that RSS link on the website itself. And I nearly forgot. I need to turn my webcam on. Okay, so was it Klout and Cred? Yes, they were the two influencer finding tools, and everyone that's using social media will have a Klout or a Cred score. It's Klout with a K and Cred with a K as well, and there's some links to those in the resources afterwards that you can download in the link that gets provided. Let me just, for a management consulting business, what advice can you offer? Could you just elaborate a bit more on what kind of advice you're looking for? Is it content to share, influencers to find? I just need a bit more information on that question. Can we have that link again? Is that for Klout and Cred, which is klout.com, and Cred, KRED.com. The other website influencer tool I was looking at is BuzzSumo, BuzzSumo. Okay. Okay. Would you advise on what kind of content is appropriate for the different stages in the buyer journey? So this will be different slightly depending on perhaps what your product or service is and your audience, because the speed of that product, the buyer journey will differ. It could be very fast or it could be several years, depending on what that is. Remember, all the way through the buying process, people have questions. They have different types of questions from very early on, knowing that they have a problem or not knowing that they have a problem but finding a different solution. So the question may be a very broad question versus that you need to answer. It could literally be a who can provide this or what are the options for, versus as someone knows what product or service they need and get more detailed and through the process, they'll have very much more specific questions, such as, you know, can this piece of software solve this, or what app do I need to scan in my receipts? So your answers will become more specific and more detailed as people kind of progress through the buyer journey. Now, if they've found you very early on at their quite open question stage, they're broad Q&A and they've recognised you at that point, they may just keep coming back to you and your answers as they go through. And the case study I shared last week, HubSpot, are wonderful at that. They have some very broad, basic content down to some really detailed content, exactly how to use email marketing software, how to write subject lines, how to get click-throughs, etc. So I would start broad, just as the funnel goes. Start broad with your content early on, start light, and then get more detailed and more focused and more specific as people are going through that journey towards making the purchase. Maybe educational to start with, maybe more awareness and fun. It depends on what your product or service is. So back to that question, for a management consulting business, what advice can I offer in terms of content? So I'm not a management consultant, but I'm a marketing consultant, and that's what I advise people on. So when I tell my story and I share my content, and I have some core themes of the kind of content that I'm going to share. And those core themes focus on marketing activity, that's the industry that I work in, and I will share marketing content that's research or best practice or latest news and trends. More specifically within marketing, as my industry, as you may gather, I talk a lot about social media. That's my channel, my tactic. It's me niching down, and so I will also share content on the specific platforms. I do more work in B2B than B2C, so you're more likely to see me sharing content around LinkedIn and Twitter than you will be about Facebook and Snapchat. That's quite wide. I'm also really interested in online learning and workplace learning, so that's something I do, that's services I provide, so I will talk about that as well. But then I also talk about what I'm doing and behind the scenes of my business. So one of my most recent pieces of content I shared on LinkedIn, it was my business birthday 2 weeks ago, 6 years, so I did a summary piece on looking back and reflecting and my key achievements in each year. So it'll be a real, again, broad balance between awareness, marketing industry, needing to show people that I know my stuff, down to details, to more about my business and about me and what I'm doing and what I'm working on and topics that I'm doing. So again, that funnel, but it's not just about content I create, it's about resources that I find as well to get that balance out there. I'm a VA, but happy to work with all types of small businesses and individuals, so work quite hard to search for influencers. Now, I have a VA, not sure if we've met or got involved in some other groups, and I found my VA, she was recommended to me by someone else that had spotted her. I needed a VA resource and her name came up. So, and I talk to other business owners all the time. I talk to other people that are setting up as consultants, and I talk about the value that I have in my business from a VA, what she does for me, what she helps me with, what she does. So I guess in a way it's someone that's already got a VA and knows the benefits of it that will be an influencer and make those recommendations for you. So all of my business in my 6 years has been referrals, not always directly from customers, but from people in my network that know what I do and how I can help. So as a VA, I would look for other people that can make recommendations for you. I'll come back to my story at the end. Let me answer some other questions. Oh, lots more questions coming in. Hang on. Going back to Feedly, is it the vessel for RSS? So Feedly is a reader. It's an RSS reader. So RSS is quite coded content, I guess, but Feedly is a tool that will aggregate that content into a user-friendly screen that you can categorize all your content into fields and categories, and it's real time. So it's a reader for the content to gather everything together. So think about, instead of having lots of email newsletters coming into your inbox, all these feeds from different sources, different keyword searches, different websites, different newsletters go into Feedly as an aggregator reader. Okay, just let me read a couple more questions. Okay, this is a great question. So I'm sorry you asked this a while ago and it was a long question, so I'm just going to come back to it. So social media, and I'm going to put into this online, and not embraced by all tech-savvy users. You know, it's not a panacea, it's not everything. So how can we look at target audiences who have political, technical, or aversions to social media? Now, you're right. There's a huge percentage of the population that aren't connected, aren't online, don't have good broadband. We take it for granted. So everything I've been talking about in terms of content and content marketing is applicable to print and outdoor advertising, bus stops, 48-sheet posters, as it is to newspaper ads and magazines. And actually, I'll come on to my story, but I worked in the postal industry and direct mail industry for 8 years and only started to use social media as a channel towards the end of that time. So leaflet drops are hugely important, particularly for local communities and local information, for health club marketing that I did for 6 years. Direct mail is hugely popular and hugely important to retailers, to charities, to publishers and financial services. And you know, Google use direct mail. If you're trying to plot your business on Google Places, then Google will send you a code. Google will send you vouchers for AdWords in the post. Not on the high street, a huge online retailer in the UK will shortly, no doubt, be producing a catalogue for Christmas, because people look at the catalogue and then go online. So the idea behind the persona is that you find out people's communication preferences for your product, your service, and their information needs. And there's even research that changes throughout the day. So it could be in the morning, you listen to the radio, you get to work, you look at your desktop, you pick up a newspaper at lunchtime or when you get home from work, then you sit and watch TV and dual screen with your tablet or your phone in the evening, and then switch back to the radio. So that's why social media isn't a strategy. That's why content marketing is not a strategy. They are all tactics or channels, but content marketing as a concept requires that planning, and everything, no matter what the channel or the tactic, requires an understanding of your target audience. Long answer to a long question. Do I need to be an expert to post content, or can I raise a concern and a point of view? So if you're sharing content as your business and trying to position yourself and your personal brand as an expert in that area, then you might consider what content you post or the questions you ask or what you do. But it's absolutely fine to ask questions or points of view. You know, we're having conversations, we're engaging, and not everything we do, posting content, needs to be fully visible to everyone. So for example, a LinkedIn discussion, someone may ask a question, but you don't need to reply publicly so that everyone in the group receives it. You can send a message directly back to that person that asked the question for more insight, or to offer your opinion one-to-one. Doesn't need to be completely public. So completely up to you, but just remember, whatever content you post does reflect on your brand, and if it's visible, it will also reflect on your brand and your personality and your business. So I think the acronym about thinking before you post, publicly or privately, is just the most important thing to adhere to. But we're all searching, we all have questions to ask. You've just asked a question, so you know, that's absolutely fine. Just going to do a couple more. Okay, Under the know your audience, how do I get to know all of that information about my audience, where they eat, what they drink, social media preferences, etc.? How do I get to know all of that? I watch them. I meet them, I talk to them, I go and find them, I hang out in the places that they're hanging out. But I'll do some desk research first. So I was recently doing some work with a client who target young mums. So the first thing I would do would be Google and find out the average age of the person that when they have children, which I think is 26 and a half in the UK. So therefore, if they have a young child that's about to start school, they're probably age 32. Okay, 32. What year were they born? What do I know about that? What years were they at school? What was influential about that time? What music would they have been listening to? What might they be doing now? I just try and build this picture using a few things that I can research online, and then if I start to work that out, I'll go and sit in the coffee shop and watch people and watch what they're doing. Sounds a bit weird. I'll go to the same shops, I'll listen to the same music. You'll start to build up a picture of what they do, but you really just need to talk to them. You need to spend the time talking to them one-to-one, and most of the time when you ask them to do that, and the reason why, because you need to get to know them and what they're doing, you know, if these are your target audience, you should have a few of them to ask those questions. So yeah, browse the magazine shelf in supermarkets. If I started working in a new sector, if I was targeting young mums, I would go and buy every magazine on that topic, see what was in there, what products were being advertised to them, how much it was, where it's being stocked, you know, literally try and become them. I've done work for a university and trying to attract people to that university town. So myself and the graphic designer and the videographer working on the project, we did the bus tour of the city to find out what, as a new person to that town, what the highlights were and what was of interest. And we asked questions to other people on the bus. So we just kind of absorb yourself in it and watch and learn. And that's why there's no shortcut to it. You won't be able to Google and say, what do 32-year-olds that have this, that, and the other do? You've got to build your audience. But if you've got a product or service, you really do need to know about that person. So you should know some of that already. It might just be filling in the gaps. Yeah. A quick question, is there a useful online tool to publish content centrally on various channels with one click? For example, LinkedIn and Twitter. There's a few social media management tools out there. Personally, I use Hootsuite. There is many others such as Buffer, TweetDeck, MeetEdgar, lots of tools, some free, some paid for. Personally, while they can be really useful to post all your content, manage everything in one place, I would make sure that you're adapting the message slightly for the platform that you're posting it on, changing it. You know, a message on Twitter is really short, might be a bit longer on LinkedIn, might be a bit longer on Facebook. Don't just post one message and click every platform that you have an account on. But my personal preference is Hootsuite. There is a free version, but there's also a paid version as well. Not a huge budget, but it has some really good, useful functionality. Okay, we do download all the questions afterwards just to have a look through. So because it is coming up to 8 o'clock in the UK, I guess 3 o'clock in the US, I'm just going to answer the last question. That was, what was my story that started me as a marketing consultant? And my story was, I'd worked in advertising agencies for 8 years. I then moved to work client side to an organisation in-house as their marketing manager. And when I was in-house as a marketing manager, I was very fortunate that it was a new industry that I started working in. And the reason it was a new industry was because the postal market in the UK was opened up to competition. Royal Mail lost their monopoly, other players came into the marketplace, and I had the opportunity to become marketing manager for an organisation that was in that industry of the postal market. And this is really interesting in terms of content, because it was a new industry. At that point of time, our content had to be about creating awareness that there was an alternative postal solution for large volume mailers to Royal Mail. People didn't know it existed. Further down the line, over the 5 years I was there, people became aware that there was an alternative, and then it became, as our organisation, more about the features and the benefits and the case studies and who we worked with. So the story changed from there is an alternative to, okay, you know there's an alternative, these are the details and this is the importance of it and this is how we work and this is who we work with, the reassurance and the testimonials and the case studies. So there was lots of content from newsletters to trade shows and everything else. There wasn't a huge amount online at the time, but then came postal strikes and we needed to communicate more quickly, so we had to use email marketing, and I discovered social media, so set up social media profiles. LinkedIn was really important for our sales team to interact with customers and clients, and I could manage that content and help them and learn. So agency side to client side, very content driven both times, but I'd worked there for 5 years. It was amazing, lots of opportunities, but I got a bit fidgety, so it was time for me to decide what to do, talk to my directors, and we decided between us that I would set up my own business, but they would stay as my first client. So I was able to set up my business just 6 years ago with their backing, my first client, and I was providing similar marketing manager resources to organisations within business-to-business services, and actually direct mail, data, mailing houses, and everything was through referrals from what I was doing. And I've built my story over those 6 years from being a marketing manager to becoming a business owner, and really just walking the walk, telling people what I'm doing, getting involved in my industry association and sharing the stories and sharing best practice and putting content out there, whether it is webinars or face-to-face talks or blogs or articles, and you get found. You get found and the story just builds. So I hope that answers some of my story. My why is I love what I do, but I'm very passionate about marketing as an industry, as a function, not just the colouring in department. It's more strategic and planned than that, and I want to help small businesses and in-house marketers get results. Not fluff, just get results by having a very planned approach. Let me just have a couple more. The management consulting questions, you've asked a few, so I'm going to take those offline and drop you a note separately. So, Kazia, I think that's all the questions for today.
Luann, great job, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. And for those of you on the line, if you got value from the session and would like to get access to our other courses, you can always join our premium membership. I'm launching a poll here on your screen right now. And if you'd like to receive more information about our premium membership, please click yes right now. In addition to the courses, with your premium membership, you get access to our free access to our virtual accelerator program, to direct messaging. You get advanced search tools, you get analytics, and other perks. So the answers are coming in. People are clicking on the poll here. I think we are mostly done. So thank you everyone. Thank you so much, and have a great day. And we'll see you next week. It will be a session on Thursday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.